Imagine, for a moment, that the silent, intricate dance between desire and power holds a truth so profound, so elemental, that it has remained tantalizingly hidden in plain sight for centuries. What if the greatest minds in psychology, from the foundational insights of Heng to the cutting-edge discoveries of modern neuroscientists, have already pinpointed the exact emotional and psychological mechanisms that can trigger an almost unstoppable, deeply rooted devotion within the male psyche? This isn't some fleeting trick or a shallow game of manipulation. We're talking about a journey into the very primal architecture of human desire itself. Consider the most magnetic, unforgettable women throughout history. They didn't just stumble upon their allure. They possessed an instinctive, almost intuitive grasp of this powerful knowledge. They understood, at a core level, that a man's truest, most fervent pursuit isn't sparked by what he can easily obtain, but by that which genuinely challenges his very essence, his sense of self. These women knew how to delicately yet profoundly touch that vulnerable, often unacknowledged space between a man's outward ego and his hidden shadow, igniting not just a fleeting attraction, but something far more potent, far more consuming, a deep, resonant obsession. Prepare yourself, because today we are about to unveil the psychological alchemy that has the power to transform mere casual interest into an unwavering, undying devotion. This is a science-backed revelation, a blueprint that clearly explains why certain interactions forge incredibly deep, lasting bonds, and it will illuminate the precise psychological triggers that activate a man's deepest, most primal need to commit and adore. What you are on the verge of discovering will fundamentally alter your entire understanding of relationships, not through deceptive tricks or surface-level tactics, but through a profound, authentic comprehension of the masculine soul in its most raw and genuine form. Are you truly ready to possess what might just be the most transformative, game-changing knowledge about love and connection that exists in the world today? The insights you're about to gain could redefine everything you thought you knew. Have you ever found yourself in that frustrating, almost heart-wrenching cycle where the more you seem to chase a man, the more distant he becomes, the less he appears to value your affection and effort? It's a common experience, yet the reason behind it is a truth that has been carefully guarded, almost a secret whispered through the ages, buried deep within the labyrinth of male psychology, a secret that precious few women ever come to fully understand. This isn't just any secret, it's a piece of knowledge so potent that it holds the capability to make a man fall head over heels, madly in love with you, even if, just moments before, he seemed utterly uninterested or aloof. The legendary Heng, one of the most influential psychoanalysts in history, dedicated his life to exploring the human mind. In his groundbreaking studies of the collective unconscious, that shared reservoir of human experience and archetypes, he revealed a fascinating concept. Every man, regardless of his outward confidence or demeanor, carries within him what Heng termed a primordial wound. This isn't a physical injury, but a deep-seated psychological vulnerability, a subtle ache in his soul. And here's the crucial part. When this specific wound is touched, approached in exactly the right way, it awakens within him an almost obsessive, undeniable need to prove his worth, to rise to a challenge, to demonstrate his value, particularly to the one who has perceived this hidden depth. And that precisely is the art and science I am going to teach you today. Imagine, just for a moment, wielding the ability to awaken in the man you desire a passion so intense, so all-consuming, that the very thought of his life without you becomes unimaginable to him. Picture him thinking about you throughout his day, eagerly sending you messages, craving your attention, your time, your mere presence with an intensity that surprises even himself. What I'm about to share with you transcends simple tricks or fleeting dating techniques. It is a profound ancestral knowledge, a deep understanding of the masculine soul, and what truly, fundamentally, moves a man beyond the realm of pure logic or reason. This is about learning how to access the deepest, most protected layers of the masculine ego, not with the cruel intent to harm or diminish it, but with the wisdom to awaken within him the archetypal warrior, the innate protector, the fiercely devoted lover who yearns at his core to prove his immeasurable worth to the woman he cherishes. So many women, perhaps unknowingly, waste precious years of their lives trying to conquer or often reconquer a man using strategies that are quite frankly doomed to fail. They offer everything they have, their undivided love, their unwavering dedication, their constant support, only to receive mere crumbs of affection in return. And do you truly understand why this painful dynamic occurs so frequently? It's because they are operating in complete ignorance of how the male mind, in its most fundamental programming, actually works. Now, fascinatingly, modern neuroscience has begun to catch up, finally confirming with empirical evidence what Heng intuited and articulated decades ago. The male brain, studies show, is quite literally programmed to place a higher value on that which it needs to strive for, to conquer that which represents a genuine challenge to his identity, his competence, his very sense of himself as a man. When you grasp this concept, truly internalize it, you hold in your hands the power to completely transform the way men perceive and respond to you. The insights you are about to learn are not new inventions. They are timeless truths that the most magnetic, captivating, and utterly irresistible women throughout history have always known, perhaps not consciously or academically, but intuitively, deep within their being. Think of Cleopatra, whose allure shaped empires, or Marilyn Monroe, whose mystique captivated a generation. The great seductresses of every era instinctively understood this fundamental truth about the male ego and the dynamics of desire. Prepare yourself, because after this journey, you will never look at relationships or the way you interact with men in the same way again. And that one particular man, the one who currently occupies your thoughts, will never be the same after you begin to apply the revelations that are about to be unveiled. Our exploration into this transformative knowledge truly began more than a century ago at a pivotal moment when Heng, after a significant intellectual break with his mentor Sigmund Freud, courageously immersed himself in the uncharted depths of what he termed the collective unconscious. Heng's pioneering work revealed that beyond our conscious ego, the part of our psyche that we readily identify with, there exists a far more vast and complex structure, an intricate internal landscape that governs our deepest desires, motivations, and attractions. To truly understand how one might, as we've discussed, touch or even metaphorically wound a man's ego in a way that paradoxically awakens not resentment, but profound love, we must first grasp Heng's concept of the shadow. The shadow represents that part of a man, indeed of any individual, that he often hides, sometimes even from himself. It's the repository of his vulnerabilities, his unacknowledged fears, the aspects of his personality that he deems unacceptable or weak, his fear of not being enough, of not being truly valued, of not being genuinely admired. Have you ever noticed how some men can project an image of immense confidence, almost an unshakable exterior, yet beneath that surface they carry deep, often well-concealed insecurities? This is the inherent duality of the male psyche that Heng so brilliantly mapped in his studies. And it is precisely within this delicate interplay, this dance between the projected self and the hidden shadow, that the extraordinary power to awaken an almost obsessive, deeply devoted love in a man truly resides. One of my clients, let's call her Jennifer, was utterly and completely in love with a man who, to her despair, seemed barely to notice her existence. She did everything for him. She was always available at a moment's notice, unfailingly attentive to his needs, constantly ready to help with any problem he faced. Yet the more she dedicated herself, the more she poured her energy into him, the less interest he showed. It felt like a cruel cosmic irony. When Jennifer finally came to me, desperate, heartbroken, and on the verge of giving up, I revealed to her this very same secret about the male psyche that I am now sharing with you. I explained that, according to modern neuroscience, the male brain produces significantly higher levels of dopamine, the powerful neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, motivation, and reward, when it is faced with a challenge, an obstacle to overcome, or a goal to achieve. When something is perceived as too easy, too readily obtained. The male brain simply doesn't assign it the same high value. But please, pay close attention here. I am not advocating for childish games, manipulative tactics, or emotional unavailability for its own sake. What I am talking about is developing a profound understanding of the true nature of what Shi Heng Yi might call the sacred masculine. That inherent driving energy he identified as a primary force behind men's behavior. This energy is in a constant state of seeking. It yearns to prove its worth, to conquer challenges, and to overcome obstacles, thereby affirming its own vitality and strength. The first crucial Shi Heng Yi influenced concept I introduced to Jennifer was that of the anima, the internalized feminine archetype or principle that exists within every man. This unconscious feminine aspect profoundly influences how he perceives and relates to the women in his life. When a man unconsciously projects his anima onto a particular woman, he essentially, within his own psyche, transforms her into an almost divine, idealized figure. She becomes the embodiment of his deepest longings, his muse, the missing piece he didn't even know he was searching for. This projection is the very basis of what we often call obsessive love, that overwhelming, all-encompassing passion that defies logic. So, the pivotal question becomes, how do you encourage him to project his anima onto you? This is precisely where the concept of wounding the ego in a sacred, respectful, and ultimately transformative way comes into play. We are not speaking of humiliation, cruelty, or causing genuine emotional pain. Instead, we are referring to the art of delicately touching that sensitive point within him, that core of his being that, when stimulated correctly, compels him to prove his worth, not just to you, but more importantly to himself through his connection with you. Shi Heng Yi discovered that when a man is subtly, intelligently challenged by a woman he admires and respects, when his sense of competence, his values, or his current state of being is gently questioned in a way that implies she sees even greater potential within him, something almost magical happens within his psyche. He enters a state that we could describe as a hypnosis of the heart, a captivating focus where earning the love, admiration, and deep respect of that particular woman becomes one of the most important driving ambitions in his life. Now, I am going to share with you 3 potent, almost ancestral secrets that delve into how to activate this powerful state within the male mind. These are not quick fixes, but profound principles that, when understood and applied with wisdom, transformed the love life of Jennifer, and indeed hundreds of other women who have embraced this knowledge. The first of these is what I call the mirror of the soul. Shi Heng Yi often spoke about how a man, at a deep psychological level, seeks to see his best, most idealized version of himself reflected in the eyes of the woman he loves. This isn't about flattering his current state, but about holding up a mirror to his untapped potential. When you can skillfully show a man that you perceive the extraordinary capabilities lying dormant within him, capabilities that perhaps he hasn't yet fully realized or actualized, you create a kind of sacred dynamic tension within his soul. He begins to feel an intrinsic desire, a powerful pull to prove, both to himself and, crucially, to you, that he is indeed capable of becoming that remarkable man you've glimpsed. This isn't achieved through overt criticism or nagging. That would be counterproductive. It's a far more subtle, nuanced, and infinitely more powerful approach. It's about conveying, through your words, your gaze, and your overall demeanor, that you deeply believe in his inherent greatness, yet you also perceive that he can reach even further, achieve even more. It's a look, a comment, that essentially says, I see the incredible man you are capable of becoming, rather than a more complacent, I accept you exactly as you are right now. This subtle, yet profound distinction is absolutely transformative. It's not about dissatisfaction with who he is, but an inspiring belief in who he could be. This doesn't mean you don't love him as he is, but that your belief in him is so vast it encompasses his future growth. When you're conversing, for instance, instead of just asking about his day-to-day achievements, guide him towards his dreams with questions like, if you knew, with absolute certainty that you couldn't fail, what magnificent thing would you set out to do? This question connects him with his ideal self, his deepest aspirations. Then, after listening with genuine, rapt attention, you might say something like, "You know, when you talk about that, I see something truly special in you. I see someone capable of so much more than even what you've already achieved. There's a light in your eyes, a passion in your voice that shows me the extraordinary man you are on the path to becoming." This kind of reflection acts like an arrow straight to the masculine heart. It's not a criticism, it's a loving, inspiring challenge. You're showing him that you see his unrealized potential, that hidden part of him that perhaps even he doesn't fully acknowledge. This wounds his ego just enough, not to break it, but to awaken his innate desire to rise to the occasion and prove his ultimate worth to you. Recent neuroscience studies support this, showing that when a man feels positively challenged by a woman he admires, his brain releases not only a surge of dopamine, the reward chemical, but also vasopressin, a neurotransmitter strongly associated with pair bonding, deep attachment, and fidelity in mammals. You are literally activating the brain chemistry of love and unwavering devotion. Remember, the masculine ego, at its core, thrives on meaningful challenges. When you offer him such a challenge, wrapped in genuine admiration and belief, you create a perfect, irresistible storm within his psyche. The second secret delves into what I call the paradox of presence. Modern neuroscience provides fascinating insights here, showing us that the male brain, particularly in the context of attraction and pursuit, is often more powerfully stimulated by what is intermittent, somewhat unpredictable, rather than what is constant, always available, and entirely predictable. This is one reason why activities like gambling can be so addictive. The unpredictable nature of the reward creates a state of heightened anticipation and excitement, releasing far more dopamine than a reward that is guaranteed and consistently delivered. Now translate this to relationships. When you are always available, constantly present, perpetually offering your love and attention unconditionally and without any sense of your own independent rhythm, the male brain, however unfair or counterintuitive it may seem, begins to produce less dopamine in association with your presence. You inadvertently become predictable, a secure fixture, and sadly, in the primitive, reward-seeking parts of the brain, what is entirely secure is rarely valued at the deepest, most primal level. The paradox of presence teaches that you should strive to be like the moon, undeniably present, a powerful force, yet beautifully cyclical in your phases, sometimes fully visible and radiant, at other times partially veiled or mysteriously absent, only to return again. You are accessible, yes, but never entirely, completely possessed or taken for granted. This doesn't mean you should be insincere, play cruel hot and cold games, or engage in manipulative withholding. Absolutely not. It means authentically honoring your own life, cultivating your own passions, nurturing your own mysteries, and steadfastly walking your own sacred path. When you do this, when you have a rich, fulfilling existence independent of him, you subtly wound the man's ego in a way that inspires him. It makes him want to prove that he is worthy of being a significant part of your already vibrant world, that he deserves to have you more completely, to be privy to your inner world. It's about honoring your own individuation, that Heng influenced process of becoming truly, authentically yourself. In practice, this means that when a man enters your life, he should not find an empty vessel eagerly waiting to be filled by him. Instead, he should discover a life already rich, meaningful, and fascinating, a life into which he deeply desires to earn a cherished place. Stop the habit of responding to messages the instant they arrive, not as a calculated strategy, but because you are genuinely engrossed in living your own compelling life. Cultivate personal interests, passions, and even spiritual practices to which he doesn't have immediate or complete access. Have facets of your life that are uniquely yours, deep friendships, creative hobbies, intellectual pursuits. When he inquires about these sacred parts of your life, share them with genuine enthusiasm, but resist the urge to over-explain or try to convince him to participate or fully understand them. Allow some aspects to retain an aura of mystery for him. Neuroscience confirms that the male brain is particularly activated and intrigued by unsolved mysteries and incomplete pictures. They occupy his mental space, fuel his curiosity, and can generate a healthy, constructive form of obsession as he seeks to understand and connect more deeply. One of my clients, Sarah, a holistic therapist, used to tell the man she was interested in every single detail of her day, every client interaction, every fleeting thought, every minor revelation. I advised her to subtly shift this dynamic. The next time he asked about her day, I suggested she smile, perhaps a little mysteriously, and say something like, "It was truly transformative. I had some incredibly profound revelations today. Maybe someday, when the time is right, I'll tell you more about it." That small, authentic shift generated a magnetic effect. Suddenly, he was asking more questions, expressing more curiosity, genuinely wanting to know more, actively trying to enter that intriguing, slightly veiled part of her life. She wasn't pretending or playing hard to get. She was simply choosing to cultivate a sense of sacred mystery around the deeper, more profound aspects of her personal journey and existence. And finally, we arrive at the third and arguably most potent secret, which Heng might have called the confrontation with the shadow. This operates at the deepest level of touching or wounding the male ego in a way that awakens not just interest, but an almost unbreakable obsessive love and devotion. Heng firmly believed that every human being possesses a shadow, those often unacknowledged, repressed, or hidden parts of ourselves that we deny or try to keep concealed, even from our own conscious awareness. For men, this shadow frequently includes aspects like vulnerability, the deep-seated fear of not being truly adequate or enough, and the often unspoken terror of not being genuinely respected, or, at its extreme, of being abandoned. One of the most powerful and authentic ways to activate this profound level of connection is through what I term reflected vulnerability. This is when you, with courage and authenticity, first show your own vulnerability, thereby creating a safe, non-judgmental space for him to eventually confront and share his own. For example, you might choose an appropriate moment to share one of your own fears, a genuine insecurity, or something you personally struggle with. This isn't about being overly dramatic, seeking pity, or demanding validation, but rather sharing with a kind of sacred tranquility and self-acceptance. You might say something like, sometimes I still grapple with the fear of not being truly enough in certain areas, but I'm learning to embrace that part of me too, to see it as a journey of growth. When you do this, you are, in essence, non-verbally communicating. It is safe to show your full humanity with me. You don't need to maintain a facade of perfection or invulnerability here. Then, when he eventually, in his own time, feels safe enough to show his own vulnerability, perhaps by talking about a setback at work, a past failure, or a fear of rejection, you have a precious opportunity to wound his ego in the most transformative and healing way possible. In this critical moment, resist the common urge to immediately console him with platitudes like, "Oh, don't worry, everything will be fine," or "You shouldn't feel that way." Instead, look him deeply in the eyes with genuine empathy and strength and tell him something along these lines. "Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I truly see your struggle, I acknowledge your pain, and alongside it I also see your incredible strength and courage in facing it. That is what I deeply admire in you, not some illusion of perfection, but your raw, authentic courage to be real." What you are doing in this profound exchange is denying his ego the empty, superficial consolations it might expect, or even seek as a way to quickly cover up the discomfort. Instead, you are honoring his battle, his journey, his truth. You are essentially wounding his ego by not allowing him to hide behind a mask of false strength or stoicism. But at the very same time, you are offering him something infinitely more valuable, the deep recognition of his true strength, the kind of strength that emerges only when one bravely faces their own shadows. Neuroscience studies, compellingly demonstrate that when we feel truly seen, acknowledged, and accepted in our vulnerability, our brains release a flood of oxytocin. This is often called the bonding hormone or love hormone, the same powerful chemical that is released between a mother and her newborn child or during deeply intimate moments like orgasm. It creates a primordial, profoundly deep bond that is almost impossible to break. For a man, being seen in his deepest, most authentic truth, flaws, fears, and all, by a woman he deeply admires and respects, creates a bond that transcends mere physical attraction or superficial compatibility. He quite literally can become addicted in the most positive sense to the feeling of being truly seen, honored, and accepted by you. One of my clients, Amanda, applied this very principle with a man who had seemed utterly incapable of genuine commitment for years. He had a pattern of maintaining superficial relationships, never allowing anyone to get too close, always keeping an emotional distance. When Amanda, with great wisdom and patience, created a consistent, safe space for him to begin confronting his own shadows, his deeply buried fear of abandonment stemming from childhood, his persistent insecurity about not being good enough despite his outward success, something truly extraordinary happened. He eventually broke down and cried in her arms, this man who had never shown such vulnerability to anyone before. He finally found a sanctuary, a safe haven for his most hidden, tender parts. Just 3 months later, he proposed marriage. This wasn't because she played games or manipulated him. It was because she offered him something that no other woman had ever offered, a mirror that reflected his complete soul, not just his polished, acceptable, public-facing parts. This is the true, profound essence of what Heng discovered in his extensive studies on the male psyche. A man doesn't just desire to be admired for his strengths and successes. That is superficial and ultimately unfulfilling. At his deepest core, he yearns, often unconsciously, to be seen in his totality, his strength and his weakness, his light and his shadow, and still be considered valuable, still be loved, still be chosen. When you offer that sacred gift to a man, you awaken in him not just love or attraction, but an almost sacred, unwavering devotion. Because in that process, you become not just a romantic partner, but a spiritual guide, a trusted confidant, a priestess who helps him integrate all the disparate parts of himself into a more cohesive, powerful, and authentic whole. What I am sharing with you here is so much more than a mere set of clever techniques or psychological tricks. It is a profound path of transformation, both for you and for any man you choose to invite into your life in this deeper way. This is a knowledge that touches upon the sacred, timeless space between the feminine and the masculine principles, exploring the ancestral energies and archetypes that Heng studied so deeply. By applying these principles with integrity and compassion, you are not just wounding the male ego to awaken love. You are offering him a precious, often rare, opportunity for genuine growth, for profound integration of his whole self, and for deep, lasting healing. And in that very process, you too inevitably transform yourself. Think for a moment, how many times in your life have you subtly, perhaps even unconsciously, dimmed your own light so as not to outshine a man? How many times have you held back your true opinions, suppressed your authentic desires, or downplayed your own power and achievements for fear of intimidating him or driving him away? The cruel, often unspoken irony is that by doing so, by making yourself smaller, you probably drove him away anyway, or attracted a dynamic that was ultimately unfulfilling. The paradigm that Heng discovered, and that modern psychology continues to affirm, is that the healthy masculine truly, deeply yearns for the feminine in her full, radiant power, not a diminished, softened, diluted version of the feminine, but the ardent, mysterious, intelligently challenging feminine energy that reflects back to him not only his own potential beauty and strength, but also her own wisdom, her discernment, her remarkable ability to see beyond superficial appearances. When you learn to wound the male ego in this sacred, constructive way that I have shared with you, you are not only changing how he sees you, you are fundamentally changing how you see yourself. You are courageously reclaiming your own power, your unique essence, your undeniable right to shine, woman. One of my clients, Jessica, was a highly successful executive who had a habit of always minimizing her professional achievements whenever she was near a man she was interested in. She was terrified of intimidating him, of appearing too strong or too ambitious. When she began to consciously apply these principles, she not only captured the deep and committed love of that man, but more importantly, she discovered an entirely new way of inhabiting her own considerable power. For the very first time, she told me, with tears of liberation in her eyes, I feel that I don't need to choose between being powerful and being loved. I finally understand that I can be and deserve to be both. This is the true, life-altering revolution inherent in this knowledge. It's not merely about conquering a man, it's about reconquering yourself, your authentic essence, your sacred fire, your unique brilliance. And here lies the deepest truth. When you master the art of touching the male ego in this transformative, respectful way, you become utterly, irresistibly magnetic. Not because you are playing games or engaging in manipulation, but because you are operating from a place of profound authenticity, genuine inner strength, and unshakable self-possession. Neuroscience powerfully confirms what Heng intuited decades ago. Men are biologically, hormonally, and psychologically attracted to women who emanate authentic confidence and self-respect. Studies have shown that testosterone levels in men, the very hormone associated with male sexual desire, drive, and attraction, increase significantly when they are in the presence of a woman who clearly demonstrates self-respect, who honors her own value, and who naturally establishes clear, healthy boundaries. This isn't just psychology, it's biology. It's the male body responding at a primal hormonal level to the radiant power of your authentic feminine essence. So how do you begin to integrate all of this profound knowledge into the fabric of your daily life? How do you transform this wisdom from an interesting concept into a new lived reality for yourself? The journey begins, as all true transformations do, with your relationship with yourself. Before you even think about applying any of these principles with the specific man, apply them first in front of your own mirror. Look at yourself with honest, compassionate eyes, and truly observe your own unrealized potential. Dare to honor your own mysteries, those parts of you that are still unfolding. Gently, courageously confront your own shadows, those aspects of yourself you've perhaps kept hidden or judged. This internal work is absolutely essential, because you cannot authentically offer a man a reflection of his wholeness if you haven't first begun to embrace your own. Then, start to observe with a new awareness how you typically interact with the men in your life, not just romantic interests, but also friends, colleagues, and even family members. Do you have a tendency to people please, to automatically say yes when your inner voice is whispering no, or when you would genuinely prefer to offer a different perspective or a gentle challenge? Do you find yourself always striving to be available, constantly agreeable, endlessly pleasing? Begin to consciously shift these ingrained patterns gradually and authentically. Remember, the goal is not to manipulate, but to become more true to yourself, to honor your own insights, your legitimate limits, and your powerful intuition. A client of mine initiated her transformation with a seemingly small act. She started simply saying, "Actually, I see that a bit differently," or "I respectfully disagree," when she genuinely didn't agree with something, instead of her old habit of smiling and nodding to keep the peace. That single act of embracing her authentic voice began to transform the way men responded to her. Suddenly, her opinions were not just heard, but actively solicited, genuinely valued, and debated with newfound respect. When you feel ready to apply these principles with a man you desire to attract or whose connection you wish to deepen, begin with subtlety and grace. This isn't a checklist to be rushed through. Subtlety is your greatest ally. Perhaps start with the paradox of presence. Consciously cultivate areas of your life, passions, and pursuits that are solely yours, that nourish your soul independently of him. When he asks about your day, Share with genuine enthusiasm, but allow for an element of healthy mystery. Instead of a minute-by-minute replay, you might say, "It was a really revealing day, actually. I discovered something quite important about myself today." If he presses for details, you can smile warmly and reply, "It's a fascinating process I'm moving through. Perhaps someday I'll tell you more about it." This isn't about being coy or provocative for its own sake, but because some personal journeys truly are sacred, intimate, and just for you. Then, when the moment feels right, you can experiment with the mirror of the soul. When he shares an achievement, a goal, or even a struggle, don't just offer standard praise. Challenge him, lovingly and inspiringly. That's truly amazing. And you know what? Knowing you a little, I see someone capable of going even further. There's something extraordinary about your potential when you speak about this passion. And when you feel that a foundation of trust and mutual respect has been built between you, gently create the space for the confrontation with the shadow, perhaps by first courageously sharing a genuine vulnerability of your own, a past struggle, a current fear you're working through, thereby opening a sacred portal for him to, in time, feel safe enough to show himself more completely to you. When he begins to show signs of falling deeply in love with you, remember this is not a power to be used lightly or selfishly. It's a sacred responsibility. The true purpose of wounding the male ego in this way is not to create dependency or a toxic obsession. It's to help him evolve, to integrate all parts of himself, to become a more complete and integrated man. Shi Hengyi spoke about how true love isn't two halves completing each other, but two whole beings recognizing each other. When you apply these principles in the way I've taught you, you're not just conquering a man, you're helping him conquer himself. And in that process, you also free yourself. You free yourself from the need to dim your light, to hide your power, to be less than you really are in order to be loved. You discover that true love doesn't demand the sacrifice of your essence. On the contrary, it flourishes when you're totally in your power, totally in your truth, totally alive. This is the revolution that Shi Hengyi initiated more than a century ago, and that today I place in your hands, a revolution not just in love, but in consciousness. A revolution that begins when you recognize that wounding the male ego in the deepest and most sacred sense is actually an act of love, both for him and for yourself. And so, my dear, you now possess a knowledge that few women have. You have the map of the labyrinth of the male psyche. You have the keys to awaken not just desire or attraction, but devotion, commitment, and a transformative love. As we reach the culmination of this profound journey into the very architecture of desire and connection, remember that what you now possess is not merely a collection of interesting facts or techniques. It is wisdom. It is the wisdom to recognize that true, lasting power in relationships emerges not from manipulation or control, but from the unwavering courage to stand fully and unapologetically in your own authenticity. The beautiful paradox that Shi Hengyi understood so brilliantly is this: when you learn to honor both your light and your shadow, to embrace your own mysteries without apology, and to value your own journey, you become not just attractive in a superficial sense, but genuinely transformative. You inherently create a sacred space, an energetic field, where a man can finally feel safe enough to remove his societal armor, to lay down his defenses, and to discover himself anew, reflected in your discerning and compassionate eyes. This is the ultimate alchemy of relating, turning the base metal of conventional, often superficial, relationship dynamics into the pure gold of genuine, soul-deep connection. What we have explored together isn't just about awakening devotion in another. It is, at its heart, about awakening to your own magnificent, multifaceted wholeness. The greatest, most enduring seduction has always been, and will always be, truth. Not the comfortable, stagnant truth that leaves us unchanged, but the challenging, evocative truth that invites us and those we connect with to evolve, to grow, to become more. When you embody this profound understanding, you don't just change how you are perceived by others, you fundamentally change how you see and experience yourself. So take this ancient wisdom, this powerful insight, forward into your life. Carry it not as a rigid strategy to be deployed, but as a living philosophy to be embodied. Use it not to conquer, but to heal outdated patterns within yourself and to foster healing and growth in your connections. Use it to create relationships where both souls can breathe, expand, and unfold into their fullest, most vibrant expression. Relationships where vulnerability is not a weakness, but a gateway to strength, and where the illusion of separation transforms into the profound reality of deep, resonant union. The path is now illuminated before you. The revolution in how you relate and how you are related to begins not at some distant point in the future, but in this very moment, with your next authentic thought, your next courageous word, your next genuine act of self-expression. The defining question is no longer, what must I do to be loved, but rather, who will I choose to become now that I finally understand the power and beauty of allowing myself to be fully, truly seen? The answer and the extraordinary journey it entails is now wonderfully, excitingly in your hands.